get it in a way, because you need to actually spend some time on, like, it's like a 2 to 3 week kind of thing until it really clicks on you. And so I always felt like with the people that I knew, like, I had a lot of free time. Like, I left the company in April. Until October, I was like, I can dive into this. And I was like, this is like, how does nobody get this?
It's like catnip for all.
It was crazy catnip. I didn't sleep much, all of this. But what happened within the company seemingly is that when there was like Thanksgiving, there was for the Europeans, a lot of it was over summer, and then Christmas. A lot of people sort of, and they also get free credits during those times. And so like more and more people get.
Oh, you mean the AI companies often give you generous
and so like
credits.
More and more people went into this, and especially after Christmas, I would guess like in more than half the companies I talked to, after Christmas it really exploded. And it exploded in sort of in all the ways you would expect it, where like all of a sudden the quality drops. And it doesn't necessarily drop because like people want to make worse code, but because it actually takes some effort to stay within this. And we have seen this in the startup ecosystem already in the summer last year. Like if you pay attention to like the YC startups, a lot of them, some of them have their stuff on GitHub, or like for some period of time on GitHub, and you can look at it, and like at the time because like plan MD files checked in and like everything attributed to Claude. So like that vibe coding kind of thing was for like prototypes and whatever, and like that built that out. It was already out there to see. But then gradually, a small version of this has like been code bases with a little bit of vibe slop on top. And an interesting sort of part of this was like how engineering teams and companies are now responding to that, with all kinds of like different findings. But a lot of it has been challenged to review PRs. They're getting larger and larger, and they're becoming like more psychological taxing.
Like engineers specifically are having a hard time keeping up with the longer PRs. They're more frequent.
Yeah, and a lot of the code in those PRs is how an engineer wouldn't do it, because as an engineer, you sort of get a really bad feeling committing certain code because you think of your future self, and the agent really does not care. This is I will retell this story over and over, but like I worked for an Xbox One game at the time, right around the Xbox One launch. So there was like a fixed day, it has to release on that day. So I worked on the Halo Master Chief Collection. And there was a game where you had like a matchmaking component, and you had to like start this thing and whatever. And it was an all hands on deck kind of situation where people had to go in and unslop the human-made slop that was the matchmaker. And it was a system with like way too many states. We call it an emergent state machine because it was like 16 bools on one massive thing. And like in theory, there were only 6 valid states. But in reality, it was a geometric explosion of possible states. And that's how agentic code feels like, where it really should only be like a very clearly defined system. But in all reality, they're like, oh, config doesn't load. Let's catch it down and load the default config. So instead of actually failing, it now recovers. But now your code is way more complex than it should be, because instead of failing properly, it is now recovering and entering these many more failure states. And that makes it much harder to work with this code, because you can also not really ask the agent to refactor it, because it's like, oh yeah, this could be possible, so we need to maintain this invariant.
I think it's kind of even worse than what you described about your human-made complex system. Because there are moments of brilliance in agents where they spit out perfectly fine, simple code, exactly the amount and type of code you didn't need for that specific thing. And you as the steering engineer looking at that are like, wow, this is amazing. I can just sit back and not care because it's obviously doing the thing. Like 2 minutes later, you have another agent running in this window and it spits out the worst horrible garbage. Because, but you might not